There are many games that I have played on PS2 as a kid, and eventually I will end up talking about all of them, maybe, but for now we are talking about Cars, so sit back and find out if Cars for the PS2 holds up to my childhood nostalgia. After watching the movie Cars, did you ever want to be able to play as these famous characters as well? Well, Cars is exactly that. You can race not just as Lightning McQueen, but also a handful of other characters from the movie as well. At the core, this game is just a racing game, but it also has minigames along with its own story mode. So let's start there. Now, what actually surprised me the most about this game is that the story mode isn't just a copy and paste of the movie. It actually serves as more of a sequel, which means, shouldn't this be the real Cars 2? Anyways, back on topic. The story of these games serves the purpose of introducing everything the game has to offer, from training levels where you can learn techniques to use during racing, to minigames which allow you to do more than just race. Now, you begin the story of racing in Radiator Springs, only to awaken to find out it was all a dream. Here we see McQueen exit his cone, and we are introduced to the free roaming aspect of this game, which you can do around the entirety of Radiator Springs as McQueen only. Here you have these big indicators that let you enter levels/races of the world. The levels can either be a race, which takes place around the map, or a minigame, which has multiple levels within it, or some other stuff too, like character customization and more. The free roam isn't anything too fancy, and in fact, besides when you receive the mail collecting challenge, you don't have much reason to explore the map. Each level is well highlighted and easy to get to by following the minimap, which, not gonna lie, kinda sucks as it has no details, and besides direction, distance was hard to tell, but it did the job, I suppose. Waypoints were also reused a lot, and once you reach a map, you could just teleport to that location. They were also pretty close together, so yeah, not much really reason to explore. The world itself does a great job encapsulating Radiator Springs. It basically looks exactly the same as the movies, with a few new details thrown in. But besides the town areas, the rest is kind of boring and bearing to look at. But I guess that's hard to do when it's mostly a desert. But to get back to the story, it isn't the movie story, which I thought it was, but I guess as a kid, I didn't really pay too much attention to that. Instead, it's actually the story of how McQueen won his first Piston Cup, which I think is the coolest part about this game. Because usually the games just repeat the story of the movie, but they decide to not do that, which I love. Oh, one last thing before the next section. The soundtrack in the movie is entirely copyrighted music, and there's only like 5 songs, which is why you won't be hearing any of it. Instead, enjoy the random background music I put on, and also the entire game is voice acted by the original cast, which is also insane. Okay, time to move on. First off, I'm going to talk about the training levels. You start off with Doc, where you'll kind of learn the turn right to turn left thing in the movie, and the exact location is the movie. The drifting in this game, though, is honestly fun when it decides to work. Sometimes it just straight up doesn't turn, or it's hard to control, but I also could have just been not using it properly. The next levels are with Sarge, where you learn to jump through a military-style course, which is fun if you really want to master driving in this game. I, however, didn't, so I did the best I could otherwise. Jumping in this game I felt was underutilized, besides a few shortcuts on some tracks. There wasn't any need for it, which is a shame because it was fun to use. The last mechanic learned from the training is backwards driving, which is a great throwback to the movie, but honestly that is all it is. There's no benefit to using it in a race besides maybe showing off to friends, so I basically never did and forgot you could do it immediately after learning it. There is one last feature which they never tell you, and it's kind of like you tilt on the side, though I didn't really find much purpose in this besides a certain race, but that was about it. It's kind of, I don't really know how to use it properly, and I kind of wish they did explore how to use it properly more, but they just didn't. There's also a boost, but this isn't from any training course. It is super OP though, and makes the game extremely easy once you unlock it, and that's all you need to know about it. Now, I'm sure there are proper names for the next 3 modes, but I kind of forgot them, so I'm just going to call this one the town races. Basically, these are the races where they create a track in the overworld that you must follow. Basically, anywhere with the Radiator Springs, these tracks and races happen. Besides the final 3 races, these ones kind of serve as your normal races throughout. Go through 3 laps of the path given to you, sometimes 2. Or 1. These races were allowed to use all the driving techniques given to you, but mostly once you unlock, you will just be boosting ahead of the competition, and they won't catch up. The races weren't hard in the slightest, and even after bumping into objects and walls, there's a good chance you'll win by a major lead. They're also pretty strict of following the route and cut off a lot of shortcuts because of it, which is fair in some cases, but not all, because shortcuts are fun. There was also a 3-second off the road rule, where it will spawn you back on the road when you pass the time. Though sometimes it wouldn't wait 3 seconds, and most of the time it could actually be used as a benefit as it puts you further ahead of the competition. My biggest complaint about these races though is how varied the lengths were. Like, some were 3 laps, but each lap took about 2 minutes, and then there were some where it only took like 45 seconds. which didn't make any sense and just drawn out some of the races for no reason. But overall, these races were cool and let you explore new areas of the map that you might have missed because the free roam never really brought you into that area. There's actually a lot of minigames to play, all different in their own ways, but overall still are just driving around as different characters. The first one I'll talk about is Mater's tractor tipping. This one's probably my least favorite of the bunch, as I just don't personally care for stealth levels, but also they changed the controls a little bit to make this minigame kind of weird to play. It wasn't hard, but I just found it boring, and the game would bug out a lot. Here are some examples I'll just show, and this would get kind of confusing. Next is Luigi's Tire Collection. Here you play as Luigi and drive around and collect tires within Radiator Springs. There are like 8 levels of this, and my biggest complaint is that there wasn't much variety and kind of was the same thing over, except the tires got farther away each time. That was basically the levels. And the tires were just kind of completely randomly thrown on the map, so there wasn't any clear one linear way to speed through them, which is okay, but backtracking a lot was kind of a pain. Along with the map just not being great at showing the exact locations of the tires, this one just got old and boring fast. Next is the Sheriff's game, where you have to basically chase after and pull over speeders. This one would throw 3 different cars at you, and you can pick and choose what car to go after. There doesn't seem to be any difficulty level with each car, but what annoyed me the most was how suddenly they can turn or change speed, which made it difficult to keep up in, but not in like, oh my god, it's a hard way, but like, that was just annoying. Why are you doing that? Though I do agree it was very generous, so if you failed one car, it didn't make you restart the other 2, and you just picked up where you were. Mater's Derby is next. This one is basically a drive in a figure 8 across a demolition derby type track. This one is probably the hardest level in the game. The top computer is just extremely fast, and the track is so small it makes steering difficult without crashing into anything, being a CPU or wall. I barely won this on my second try. This one I liked, but man, was it really just a random difficulty spike within the game, and it never got that hard again. The next one is similar in that it is a monster truck race, but honestly, this one was extremely disappointing. The track was boring and it just wasn't hard. The idea of being a monster truck is awesome, but man, it just wasn't executed well, and everything was just slower than it should have been. The next 2 kind of coincide each other, and it's a heist and McQueen's Revenge. During the heist, you get to play as the little gang you see in the beginning of the movie as they try to steal stuff from Mac. These levels mostly consist of weaving through traffic to catch up to Mac, with each character having a different role. This would definitely be my favorite minigame of the bunch, as it has one level and is not overused, which I felt the rest suffered from. The revenge part is okay. You fight through traffic as McQueen and just have to hit the gang members 3 times to get the items back. Sometimes the traffic gets super thick to make it hard to steer, but overall it was okay to play through. It wasn't that challenging. The stadium races were kind of the boss fights of the chapters. You would have to beat them to advance to the next one, but basically these were your Piston Cup races. You would go with Mac to racetrack and go against a lot of cars around a circle for 12 laps. Honestly, to me, this was the most boring part of the game. Though these levels would prove to be more challenging than the rest, they weren't overall hard. They also took away your boost and ability to drift, and making the steering on the track more challenging despite just being oval for the most part. I think this made me more fun for some, but personally I just found this boring. Oh, I almost forgot, there is a pit stop part where basically it's just a button mash, but the buttons change every time you go through, though you only need to do 1 per race, making it a challenge to actually be quick at it because you'll end up pressing the wrong buttons for this for seconds always. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't play the verse mode, but here's basically you get to use the characters and color customizations you can unlock with the points you made as you play. Though for some reason, you could play as characters that you can in the story mode, but they're not unlocked here and you can't play them here, which makes 0 sense to me. But this is where you can play all the minigames and other burst modes and stuff, along with multiplayer with friends. This game was fun at times to play, though it definitely has a lot of rough edges with bugs and gameplay just feeling stale, but after thinking about it a lot, I came to a realization that I'm just not the biggest racing game fan. I won't let this screw the review though. Overall, Cars actually felt like it had some love put into it. It didn't feel like a game that forced to be made just to be run with the movie. It feels like its own thing entirely. You could tell with the features that the creators were most likely fans of the movie with the amount of details they put into it. Now, I do wish these features were more utilized to experience for the game, but I'm glad they took the time to add them. So, does Cars for the PS2 hold up to childhood nostalgia? I would say yes.